Hey, we're back from recess. Thanks for your patience. We'll head into this budget workshop. I guess as a short recap, a lot of this came up because of last week. Kind of went over what we were seeing in the budget and the drain it was going to put on funds that we had sitting, and in my personal opinion, too big of a drain. And in fact, you couldn't go a 2-year budget without going negative, and we can't go negative. So there's something has to be done. So I gave finance some numbers and said, take a look at these and see what it amount to. And I think that's where we're going to start today is some of your questions. And of course, this is meant to be interactive, so I don't want you to be shy. It affects all of us. Okay. So I'll just, okay.
Okay, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. So I prepared a recap of suggested further reductions to the 26 budget. I hope I got all the assumptions right in looking at the notes. So the first thing is we had Superior Court. I wasn't sure if the intent was Superior Court. The suggestion was a 20% reduction because it was Superior Court / drug court. So, but I'm showing in the event that it was, the suggestion was Superior Court and drug court both receiving a 20% reduction. So I've put on here the budget for 2025. I did adjust the budget to exclude the internal service billings and any mandatory transfers because those items more than likely can't be cut or affected by that 20% because they're already set in a cost allocation. So for Superior Court, a 20% reduction, and I also made the assumption that we're talking about a further reduction over and above the reductions that department has already made, and the reduction would be on the 2026 budget number that we have right now, which for Superior Court, the budget that's currently in Budget Boss, our system, is $2.6 million. The OFM recommended budget's a little less. It's 2.6, $2,647,707. So I wanted just to explain some of the reductions that have already been made. In this case, the department had already made some reductions for personnel lines, which includes benefits of $22,154. And then that was primarily related to some budget reductions for pro tem, and that budget was reduced by $40,000. So the personnel line items include all step increases and COLA increases that are in the budget. Then in the reductions made by the department that are not personnel, there was $101,016 that was reduced over 2025's budget. And that was primarily related to a grant that was related to cameras and security project that happened in 25, but it's not repeating in 26. So they made an overall reduction of $123,170 over 25's budget. That's about a 4% decrease. And the suggested reduction that I calculated based upon 2026 OFM number is $529,541. And just for illustration purposes, I put if they were to do that reduction as well, then they will have approximately a 24% reduction over 2025's budget. And then just for illustration purposes, I added a column saying, well, assuming if you took into consideration the reductions they already made and you still wanted a total 20% reduction, that would be 411,846 versus the 529. So I'm giving you a lot of information. I'm going to try to scroll over as well to show the numbers that I just read out. And there are handouts here as well.
You know, I taking your green column, I think when I said this, I said, I think it should give us somewhere around 3, which would put our reserves up over a little over 9, which is
Right.
not 2 months. It's about a month and a half. And so this 4.6 plus 6.2, that would put us a little over 10. We don't be almost 2 months of reserves. We're still going to lose because we're going to go from 18 or 19 down to 10 or 6.2. So it's still a cost. And I think, you know, you can go through each individual number. If you want, but I think we need to have some kind of consensus up on here where we're comfortable our ending being, no matter how we get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I know where I'm comfortable, but I don't know where my colleagues may have a different set. And if we're comfortable at 6.2, then a lot of stuff is mute. If we're comfortable at a higher number than that, then we need to figure out that last column.
Remember again, so the budget, 2026 budget, we're adopting a 2-year budget. 2026 has a little over $6 million reserve balance after all the budgets are put in. And we had an awful lot of one-time reductions in 2026 that we already did. But for 2027, the budget is not balanced, and we're at a point, in order to maintain that same reserve, I would need about $8 million of either additional cuts or revenues.
I know.
And that's really where the issue is for 2027.
And that's where I struggle. I don't
Right.
have anything against the one-time things. I think we look for those when we can, but those aren't really repeatable.
Yeah.
I mean, are they? I mean,
Not all of them.
you're gonna deplete some of that, and then you're not gonna be able to do others. It's the ongoing costs that have to come down and get more in line. Hang on just a second. So we're going to go from 19 million in reserve, which is basically 3 months. And I know our policy is 1. I get that our policy is 1. I think the auditors always tell us they'd like to see 2 or 3. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn there when they come in. Personally, I'd like to see us 2 or 3. If we could get it to 10 in that first year, and then they're still going to have something drastic happen in 27 to not be under. That's probably closer a number I'd live with, but it's not going to come without pain.
Yeah.
And I do have a question, and again, I need to apologize because I know that I'm a tightwad. Okay, you on down here in the 4th one, juvenile detention. Okay, and you have the figures here how it's going to deplete. However, I've been told that the capacities or the people that normally are detained average around 7-8 juveniles. Now, is that true? Do you know? Okay, if
Yeah.
that's the case.
Yeah, in 2024, it averaged for the entire year if you were looking at all the months, at about 10, but some months were as low as 6,
Correct,
8,
okay.
things like that.
Okay, with that in mind, it is, to me, absurd to have this amount of money when we could take and pay another county to house those juveniles for a whole lot less and take that amount totally off. Things need to be changed. If we are as tight as we are, and we can't afford to pay this amount of money when we only house the most, would you say 12 most? It doesn't add up. It's illogical to put that much money out when we could farm these kids, I hate to say that word, farm these kids out for a whole lot less money. And that might be a thought. Thank you.
Um,
Can I chip in here?
yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I watched last week's video and I apologize for not being here. And I've gone through and looked at the numbers that you proposed, and I absolutely, A, don't want to be raising taxes. B, do not want to be running the county into a major deficit problem. And at the same time, I ask myself, looking at these type of numbers, these types of cuts, where as a county, for all of the departments that are represented by this budget, what specific level of service are we required to provide? And where can we afford to cut it back? And to what degree, if we cut back services, are we failing as commissioners? I'm seeking that balance or that understanding of where do we maintain the level of service that our constituents expect from us, and at the same time, not be gouging their pocketbook and not be cutting services back to the point that we're failing Calais County. So I'm all in favor of finding a way to minimize the damage to our reserves, and at the same time preserving the level of service that we expect from everybody. So I'm open to all the suggestions that anybody's got to make this work. And I understand that the way things are headed right now is not a good direction with the numbers that we proposed at this point. The other sad part of this, in my opinion, is that maybe we should have started this process much sooner, because now we're up against a really tight timeline to get the budget approved, and at the same time, try and work out numbers that looking at these are going to be pretty objectionable to everybody sitting in a room, to try and weave that fence line and make it work.
And most of these, I'll have to add, most of these cuts at these percentages on top of what's already been done will more than likely impact personnel budgets, because, some of our departments, their budgets other than personnel will not be able to absorb these cuts proposed.
Well, and the first thing I asked myself was, if you're going to start cutting personnel, to what degree do we affect the services provided by each individual department based on the number of personnel that gets cut out of each department? Obviously, if personnel are going down, services are going to go down.
Well, me and you probably have a different take on services. I think, and I've said this before, this is nothing new. My number one job is to protect the freedom and rights of the people out here, and that means staying out of their pocket. I said, number two, they want to feel safe, and so I think you have law enforcement, you have basic. They want to be able to get around your county. You want your roads and your infrastructure to do. Other than that, all the services you talk about are things that we've told people they have to come to us for. We've passed laws, we've passed rules, we've passed fees that say you got to come to us for this. You don't have a choice. So I don't see those as, that's not really services. Those are mandates that we've sprung on people. And we need to start backing some of that off. I get that there's RCWs and there's all this stuff, but it's not the way we were founded, and we can't just keep taking from the taxpayer and telling them, you can't even put a roof on your house unless you call us. You can't drive a dozer through your property unless you call us. You can't do this unless you call us. It's gotten to complete nonsense. And I get frustrated because there's two ways government grows. It grows by taking money from you and adding new things, or it grows by putting more rules that you have to come into, that you need more people to cover. So they're not coming in for services. They're coming in because we're telling them they have to come in. The services are law enforcement helping them out there. Our services are people that keep them, they can get around the roads and they're not trapped, or we're a fortunate county, and I say it all the time. We're so fortunate. We have a landfill that is able to help us out, and we provide that for, we don't only provide it for our county, but I think Mason County does business with Lewis County, different places. So I have a little different take on services. I see, to me, when I look at it, it's more mandates that we've instructed you have to do.
So on that note, would you be comfortable saying that there are departments we have that we do not need, we can just close?
Yeah. In Rick's perfect world, I could probably line some of those up for you. Yes, I could.
Yeah.
That's,
I'm sure you could.
I understand reality. I just, and we talked about, well, let's find efficiencies. We'll work real hard to find efficiencies. Well, and that's great. And there's some that will do that. We've seen some come to us that said, hey, we identified some efficiencies. But unfortunately, at least it's been my experience over 40 years, is that's usually a trailing feature. It's not a leading feature. It meaning that when you make a change, then they find efficiencies to adapt to the change. And I would like it to be the other way. And sometimes, and there are evidence that some of that is work, but it really doesn't kick in until actually change is made. And then you have to find different ways to do things. And I think we can find different ways. Go ahead.
I was just curious, has the budget really gotten bigger like in the past 5 years, or has the revenue just really shrank? Or
Well, if you look at the tax receipts over the last few years, I'd call them pretty flat. Would
flat.
you agree with that? I mean, there's maybe little bounces here and there, but it's pretty flat. The expense side, and unfortunately, your biggest expense in most anything is personnel, contracts and stuff. With the inflation that ran through have really skyrocketed. Cost of software, cost of insurance. Our insurance is going up 700,000, 500,000.
This
We
year?
just signed a new
Actually,
contract.
the assessment is about close to 800,000. We started off the budget assuming it was about a $500,000 increase. And then with the last meeting they held and voted on, it was almost 800,000.
Almost 800,000. And then
Mhm.
the people we contract to help with the jail said, we're not doing business in Washington anymore. So we had to sign a new contract, and that's $500,000 more than
Oh,
the other.
it's over $1 million. I
So-
think it's about a
so-
million one or $1.2 million.
So I think the answer to your question is, productivity and growth in Washington State is not kept pace with the other things. And so I don't, and I'm not placing any blame on anybody here. I think we're caught in a situation where our state hadn't been productive. We're not seeing stuff going, but the pressure from all the other is caught up and it's overtaken us. And we have to, you have to address it. There's no way you can't address it. Supreme Court just ruled, we have defense lawyer mandates now that will be coming down the road, that you can only handle so many cases, which means we got to find a money tree to hire these new defenders just this stuff keeps coming at us. If I had an easy solution, if I had a magic wand and I could shake it, I'd do it, but I don't.
Has the personnel, numbers that are funded by the county budget, has that like ballooned in the past 5, 6 years, or is it about the same in terms of like numbers of bodies or?
The personnel actually has declined some. We were at
Yeah, I don't think it's,
several years ago, we were at 585 in total, and we're now budgeted in this budget, the way it is right now, about 573, 574. So slightly decreased.
yeah.
So a lot of the state tax increases are kind of double edged because they hit the citizens, but they also hit local governments.
When you keep, and I say this all the time too, and some don't like it, some maybe don't agree with it, but when you keep taking productive money from the citizens and turning it into nonsense programs that our state does, it has to affect your economy.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a study on it, and I have it somewhere. They've actually done studies on this, and it's basically every percent you take out of GDP in taxes, it affects 3% in growth. It's a cause and effect. And if you've lived long enough, you've actually seen it in action. I've seen it through Kennedy. I've seen it through Reagan. I've seen it through Clinton, although I'd probably say it was more Newt in Congress at that time. And I've seen it in Trump. You give it back to you people, you spend it much more wisely than we do. And when I talk about government, people get after me on this too. I'm not talking about employees. I'm talking about government, the entity is what I have an issue with. We have a lot of great employees that try to do a lot of good things for people. I have no issue with that. I appreciate that. But it's really not, I'm not sitting here to try and pick on employees. I'm telling you about a government entity that needs to come down into reality with what we get.
Yeah, it's like an Olympia. They were bragging about, well, we cut $7 billion out of the budget, but we also passed the biggest tax increase in the history of Washington State, and then they're heading into a huge deficit. So they're talking about next session, they got to pass another huge tax
They're gonna-
increase. But then we cut $7 billion.
To me, that's totally backwards.
Yeah, and-
Give it to the people and they'll start bringing it.
yeah.
I think a lot of those, Stepankowski will have a problem with this, but a lot of those economists up there must have got their degrees out of Cracker Jack box because they don't understand it.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
So I think we need to figure out where we're comfortable. And I don't even know, maybe we can do a 1-year budget and then tackle 7 different. I don't know how we're set up, if it's in policy or it's in code or
Yeah, it's
what
in-
it is.
It's actually in policy that we will adopt a biennial budget. But I would have to consult with legal to find out if you can amend your policy. You can even amend your policy so you can just adopt a 1-year budget.
I personally, and I look for comment from my colleagues on this, but I think it might be easier for us to come to something on a 1 year and then figure out how to work the second year. If we go to 2 years, how are we going to get rid of that 8 million number or whatever that is? I don't even know how we'll get there.
And that was my recommendation, is if there's a way we could adopt the 26 budget, and even if we adopted the 27 budget with a placeholder for further cuts, further revenue, and have a task force really dig in and look at further reductions and a whole list of ideas that people have, and get that done in the first quarter of 26 so that you have enough time to implement it for 27.
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple questions. On some of these categories, for instance, the sheriff, it says the reduction is 10%. It gives the 25 budget at 11.4, but then the 26 budget is 11.5. It's actually increased. So I'm not understanding. There's like 4 or 5 categories that the amount actually increased, even though it says there's a reduction.
Yeah. So on the sheriff's budget, for that example that you're looking at, the sheriff's budget did move. They had 2 positions and benefits and associated cost with their mental health, behavioral health tax dollars that they previously been receiving. They reduced their budget and moved those 2 the opioid budget, so it's no longer on the general fund. And these are all general fund budgets that we're looking at. So their budget in 2025 had included those positions. It's being reduced. They've also increased some of their budget line items.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of a good point to bring out. The actual county budget, when you look at it totally, we're probably going to be excess of 260 million, somewhere around there.
Yes. Mhm.
But a lot of it is what we call, I guess we refer to as like building and planning sustains itself off the fee generation. Our public works has road taxes that come in and sustains it. HHS, funds from the state that operates that, plus fees. So a lot of the county budgets are set and working. The sticking point is this general fund, which is, when you look at the overall thing, it's smaller, but it's the one that causes the problems.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
approximately 70, about 70 to 80 million dollars of the $260 million budget.
Okay, so then
So-
like when you're saying the reduction, not to pick on the sheriff, but that just happens to be the one I looked at, is 10%. That's what's going from the general fund decreased by 10%, even though the overall budget may be increased because there's other funding
Right,
sources,
right.
in essence. Okay, I get
So
that.
it's 10% on that $11.6 million, which that's why the yellow column says 1,160,000. That's 10% of that 11 million.
Okay,
budget.
but the reason that it looks like on the, like the first columns over here on the left, like it's more is because there's other funding sources coming in. I get it. Okay. And then I guess my other question, I guess maybe more for the commissioners, when the mental health tax didn't pass last year, I guess I was under the impression that drug court wasn't going to be funded anymore. And there's 300 and some odd dollars here for drug court. So I guess that's the question, like I thought I remember hearing that was what that money was, and that the will of the voters would be what happened. So I guess maybe just a question for you guys.
They moved some of that operations to opioid funds and then left some of it in. Well, my colleagues can speak to that. It passed 2-1, let's put it that way.
And so when the original budget, some of drug court personnel were always funded by general fund. There were at least 2 positions. And then the rest of the positions were funded by the mental health tax. And so that's why you see general fund, everything that was previously funded by mental health tax was moved off as far as personnel over to opioid. But that still left some general fund, as has been in the past, funding drug court.
Okay. Don't know if I quite followed all that, but that's okay. Anyway, I guess maybe Commissioner Farrell, because that was just the impression I had during the election last year, was that when that was voted down by the voters, that then therefore it wouldn't be funded anymore. So just,
And 2 of us voted to continue that for 1 more year using the opioid funds that we have.
okay, so next year it wouldn't be on the budget, it wouldn't be
It's
funded?
not in the budget for next year,
Okay.
or for 27. For 26, it would be.
Okay. Is there a reason like, why wouldn't you just, obviously some big cuts need to be made before we're going to be in the hole by quite a bit. Like what would be the reason for doing it for 1 more year and not just?
Well, personally, I attended
bite the
drug
bullet.
court a couple of times, and I see a value in trying to keep people out of jail. So what's the cost of putting them through drug court versus putting them in jail? And I guess the sentimental side of it is the family effect with all of the people that are part of a family structure that are affected by drugs. So I was one of the 2 votes that opted to maintain it for another year to see if we could find a way to keep it going or watch it die.
So your intention, I mean, because I understand those reasons, but those reasons aren't going to change in a year. So my question is then, your goal would be then to keep it eventually, like find a way to fund it.
I'd like to see it continue, but not, I don't want to go to the point of putting the mental health tax back into place. It got
Okay.
voted down for a reason.
Yeah, which I sort of took as an indictment against, maybe that's too strong of a word, of the public sort of pushing back on drug court. Like maybe that's not the best way to spend.
Well, I went back and reread the information that was in the voters pamphlet. I think that the information that was in there for the for and the against, the for was well written for the reasons for it. The against was, which I think was the predominant thing that people focused on, was taxes, no more taxes. I don't think it really was voted down because of people evaluating the system and knowing how it works or caring how it works. I think that the whole issue became just plain no taxes. So I don't think people made a conscious decision on what they were getting rid of, whether or not it was of value to the community. I think they were looking strictly on the issue of, I don't like taxes. I don't like taxes any more than anybody else does, but I think
Yeah.
taxes became the issue.
I can appreciate that, but no matter how you look at it, taxes are going to pay for it. So whether you find a new funding source, that's just a different tax, or you redo the mental health tax. Anyway, don't want to get into too deep of a discussion, but just wanted to ask about that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Did have a couple comments as to the timing. The handwriting's been on the wall for years. That we are pressed against the clock is irrelevant. Let's not forget that general fund or not, it is all taxpayer money. If there is something government spends today that can be eliminated sensibly, then today we are failing the litmus test of what government should be doing. And I don't know anywhere that it says government should run a drug court.
Question, the sheriff's line includes the jail, is that correct?
No,
No,
no. The sheriff's line is only for the sheriff's, the deputies and the sheriff's programs, does not include corrections. That has a different budget.
So corrections is not in the general fund.
It is in the general fund, but it's not on this sheet today recommending a reduction.
Oh, okay, it's not
Only
included.
the sheriff's department was part of the proposal or the suggested cuts.
Okay, that's why you said general fund runs 70 to 80 million dollars, and all of these only add up to about half of that.
Yeah.
Okay, in summary, because that gets back to, we had 5 interlocal agreements with communities around paying for us incarcerating individuals from the other counties. Okay, thank you.
we in Callis County corrections falls under the commissioner. Some counties corrections falls under the sheriff. Callis County is not one of those.
Yes, one other quick comment I want to make about the drug court issue is drug court dollars are tax dollars. And if people are in jail, that's tax dollars. So, how do you balance which one of those is a better benefit to the community? Okay, enough said.
Good morning. My name is Michael Evans. I'm a Superior Court judge. I'm an assistant presiding judge for the Superior Court. I've served as a judge since 2009. I come before you to address the proposal to reduce the Superior Court's budget by 20+%, a proposal so sweeping that it calls into question not only our operations, but our county's commitment to justice itself. I also acknowledge that this proposal originates from one commissioner, and that the full board may not share that same view. I take that as an encouraging sign. When a proposal carries consequences of this magnitude, it deserves careful, deliberate judgment from every member of the board. to pause and to consider carefully whom such a plan ultimately harms. The Superior Court's budget is roughly 7 million, 7.5 million. The proposed reduction of 1.5 million is not a trimming of excess. It is the removal of essential sinew and muscle, the very strength that allows a court to function. More than 90% of our budget is tied to the people and services the Constitution requires us to provide. A cut of this depth is not merely impractical, it is destructive. To comply with such a reduction, the court would be compelled, among other cuts, to eliminate court commissioners and to halt mandated appointments of guardians ad litem and attorneys in minor guardianship cases. Striking these services wounds the people who depend upon it and who cannot advocate for themselves. If the court commissioners are eliminated, the dockets they sustain collapse with them. Protection order hearings, child support and contempt matters, guardianship, probate cases, civil motions, Involuntary Treatment Act motions and hearings, eviction calendars, dependency matters, all would cease to operate. These are the dockets through which the court protects victims of violence, children owed support, the elderly and incapacitated needing oversight, individuals suffering acute mental illness, renters facing eviction, and families entangled in allegations of abuse and neglect. These are not optional services. These are shields and lifelines for the most vulnerable members of our community. To remove them is to leave the people defenseless in their homes, in their families, and in their most desperate hours. The Constitution of this state establishes the judicial branch alongside the legislative and executive as a co-equal branch of government. The board may set the court's overall budget, but it cannot dictate which judicial functions survive or impose program-specific cuts such as those suggested for drug court, juvenile probation, and detention. The Constitution does not permit one branch to cripple another by withdrawing the very means by which its duties are carried out. If a 24% reduction is enacted, the court will be unable to fulfill its constitutional obligations. At that point, the judiciary may be required to invoke its constitutional authority to secure adequate funding. No one in this room wishes to see scarce public resources spent litigating the basic principle that a functioning justice system must be funded at a level that allows it to function. Nor do any of us desire conflict between branches of government, but neither can we stand idle while justice is dismantled. I'm here to remind us all that justice is not an abstract ideal. It is a living force made real only if we maintain the structures that allow it to be delivered. A 24% reduction would strike at those structures and leave those most in need without the protection they are entitled to under the law. I urge this board, each of you, to consider not only the cost of funding justice, but the far greater cost of failing to do so. The rule of law is not sustained by aspirations alone. It is sustained by the courage of those entrusted with authority who are willing to support the institutions that safeguard the public. You have before you a choice with consequences that will echo through the lives of our most vulnerable citizens. Choose to protect them. Choose to uphold the Constitution. For if justice falters, it is the people, not the court, who are left to bear the weight of its absence. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the previous speaker, but let us also be reminded that the judicial branch, both state and federal, have imposed significant demands upon the public that are not representative of the public in many instances, that we are forced to have to pay rather than having a choice.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brad Thurman, Calaveras County Sheriff. Just want to make a few comments about how we arrived here today, and I want to give credit to Kathy Funk Baxter, who's been the budget director here for about 3 years. And I know since she got on board, she's been beating the drum knowing this day was coming. So it's not been a secret. We're aware that there's financial issues and we're going to reach this point, and that's where we're at. myself, and not to speak for other electeds, we did have a meeting yesterday, and I think there was a sense of, I guess, maybe betrayal for the budget process. It was been set in place. It's, they've done that for many decades. They had the 2-year budget cycle, and we entered into that in June. I think the budget packets went out, had to have those in August, a series of hearings throughout the fall. And here about a month ago, I guess, it came to a head. Kathy had to hold your feet to the fire to reach some decisions, and we were all, a lot of us were here and participated in that and thought we had a path forward for 26 and 27. Some cuts were made. And in a particular case of the sheriff's office, relying on, partially on that, I had 3 new deputies start the police academy yesterday. That's a 5-month program, which hopefully will lead to a many-decade career with the sheriff's office and serving the citizens of Cowlitz County. And part of that, we pay the state $7,800 for each of those deputies to go through the academy. So we got a commitment there to that. In terms of our staffing, we are fully staffed at this point. We have 1 retirement coming up in January, but I appreciate the commissioner's support and help with us doing that. And over the last about 3-4 years, we've actually restored 5 deputy positions to where we were back in 2008, which that was kind of one of the last big budget downturns we had, and we lost some deputies, positions. They were shifted to court security, lost 7 civilians doing court security. So we actually were able to build that back up and go to a private security model, which has seemed to work. But moving forward, the people that we're going to lose, this actually cuts into personnel. There's no way around it. I think that's been said. I think all of us know that cuts of this nature are going to cut into personnel and ability to serve the public. And particularly in our case with the sheriff's office, you said the first ones to go are going to be the newest hired, which is unfortunate. That we'd have to pull the rug out underneath them when we could have, if it was going to come to that, hopefully that could have been done prior to this. But moving forward, I think the suggestions have been made to, like I said, to maybe have a status quo budget or have something clear for 26 and kind of roll up our sleeves. And I know a lot of the department heads and electeds did that here earlier this year. We had the workshop across the hall and came up with a lot of good ideas, I think, that would result in some budget savings. I don't think those are really addressed in the budget process. But I'd encourage the commission to give us a green light or a clear path forward, at least for 26. And like I said, roll up our sleeves, sharpen the pencils, and see what we can do. I think there are ideas out there that have been used in the past, whether it's furloughs, retirement buyouts for senior employees. But I think there are ways we could work through this and maintain. It's about maintaining county services, but also being fiscally responsible. So I think there's some ideas there that really haven't been addressed. And instead of these cuts, which certainly Judge Evans had a heartfelt presentation. In fact, it's going to affect our office quite a bit too. Looking at 1.1 million, that could be up to, by my calculation, 7 or 8 deputies. Yeah, and deputies, or we have some other peripheral positions like animal control, which, as an aside, I know I've brought you guys in the loop. That's something kind of out of our control. It's been brought into the sheriff's office due to the situation of the Humane Society. That's going to add up to over $500,000 this year as it's now slated. And the Humane Society of Southwest Washington, which took over, they're upping our rates, or their proposal is from $111,000 to $225,000 for next year. And that's in the works to be brought to you here in the next few weeks, working through that with the cities and that proposal. But that's out of our control. The court security function that we provide, that's, I think, approaching $600,000 a year. And that's something we do really at the request or order of the courts to maintain that. That's in our budget. So we have these things that are not under our control. The things that really, very few things under our control are personnel. So these cuts at the current level would result in loss of deputies, being short-staffed and limiting our response times to emergencies. So I just appreciate, if you guys are willing to work with us and, like I said, roll up our sleeves and see what we can do moving forward to pare some of the expenses and serve the public. Thank you.
Do you want to hear from any other departments?
Anybody that wants to talk?
Hey, guys, I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just got inside. I apologize. I've been listening this entire time, but I was outside helping my neighbors. I just want to really quick address the drug court thing, the comment that Lorna made, which I appreciate. I voted to extend it for the 1 year using the opioid funds, and that was one of the main reasons why we had Emerald City come in and talk to us, because that was one of the alternative sources of funding that we were looking at to provide those drug court services. That is not off the table. I have had communications with Michael in this last week, actually, and just touching bases with him. But the one thought that I had as I was listening to the conversation is that, you know, we can't as a society complain about certain things that we want fixed, and then when we have when we have a solution, and because the solution doesn't hit every single point that everybody wants, we just kick it down the road. That doesn't work. You know, we're gonna have to come up with solutions that some people are not gonna like all aspects of that solution, but it's a solution nonetheless, and it's going to help us move forward. And that's really what I saw as an opportunity for us with Emerald City. There's other solutions that we can look at for alternative sources of funding so that it's not taxpayer driven, that we're still looking at. And but I apologize, I'm out of breath. I've been working. To the comments about the budget, you know, this is something that we have known that this is coming, and I've always wondered why we do a biennium budget as opposed to an annual budget. So Commissioner Dahl, I'm with you on that. Let's do it for the 1 year if we need to change what our policy is and procedures are, so that we can do it on an annual basis moving forward. I think number one, that's going to give us a little bit more leeway than what we currently have, because we're locking funds down for 2 years. And yes, we can make amendments, but I'm for the 1 year budget approval, so that gives us a little bit of time. And as the sheriff stated, we can sharpen our pencils throughout the next year, and we got work to do. I also do agree with, and I don't know, I apologize, I'm not there. I'm really frustrated about me not being there, but there was a list of things that we had, and I know that Tracy and Emily, and I don't know if Carolyn was involved in that or not, but there was a list of things that we could implement. Some of them were short term, some of them were just, you know, to help us in the near future, but some of them were also longer term that we might be able to stick with, and that would be able to help us with the budgeting. And I have that list. I don't know if Tracy is in the audience, if she could give it to one of the commissioners and we can look at that, or if Kathy has that. But there's some viable choices on there. But the reality is as Commissioner Dahl stated, we're getting unfunded mandates shoved down our throats. And because of the decisions and the choices that Olympia has made, we're having to deal with that, and we're having to make some tough choices. And I appreciate the comments that have been made. We're making tough choices with regards to our insurance. We changed our medical insurance. We saved money there. We're looking at all viable options that we have. And I would have to say that it really is going to boil down to, do we want 3 months? Do we want 2 months? Do we want 1 month? Long term, I'm more comfortable with having a minimum of 2 months in the works. I just don't know that this is the time to tackle that horse right now, given the hour that it is, so to speak. I'm for the 1 year to give us some time to hash things out so that we have a path forward.
Couple of other comments come in. The cost savings that supporters claim for drug court never made sense to me. There are significant issues with drug court from every aspect, treating individuals unequally, such as twisting the applicable laws. Equal treatment of the law is important. There is nothing in the Constitution that requires the courts to protect the underprivileged. The job of the courts is not to legislate, but to administer law. Drug court is one example of the courts legislating. When administrators are challenged, threatening to refuse prioritizing work is a typical ploy. I think what I'm hearing up here is we'd like to look and see if we could do 1 year.
Okay, I can,
Let's
look,
check on
I can
that.
check with legal.
I think it'll be easier to come to agreement on 1 year. I've looked over that list. There's well, I'll just say, I hope you can find stuff off of it that you can do and make work. I'm not
think a lot of it-
overly optimistic on that, but
Yeah, I think several items on that list have to be researched and consulted with the department that it would impact.
there's no easy things. And quite frankly, whenever this was done, if there was easy things, departments would have already done them. That's part of taking initiative.
Yep.
And it didn't happen. Are you in agreement if we try to see if we can do 1 year?
Yeah, I would be willing to look at that option, even if we have to do a 2-year, the ability to reopen it in a year
Well,
and redo it.
Well, you do have, we've traditionally adopted a 2-year budget. And then in the second year, which is, in this case would be 27, we do what's called an amended. We have the opportunity and we do an amended budget for the second year of the biennium to bring it up, to update it. But it's done in almost a year from now. That would be in the fall of 26. And I think that's too late if you really are going to look at some initiatives and some deep cost cutting.
Plus, can we run a deficit budget?
No,
I mean, if we do 2 years,
You
we're going to
cannot
show
do
a
a deficit
deficit. And
budget.
I don't think we can run a deficit budget.
no. And the other thing that you run the risk of, and we're already running the risk of, is cash flow. You have to have sufficient cash flow to pay all your bills. And the way we're set up, to one of our major streams of revenue, which is our general property tax, primarily comes in twice at 2
Right.
increments for the year April and October. So you're running the risk of a cash flow issue because that 1 month won't possibly be enough to bridge the cash flow issues.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about that too.
Anybody out there have issues with 1 year if we move that way? Okay.
I think some of these departments also have some suggestions of some things that they possibly may be able to cut. But not, I don't think any of them to the extent of what's proposed without impacting personnel.
But I guess in reflection of some of the comments that have been made for services and overall county responsibilities, yeah, I agree with road crew taking care of the county roads, et cetera. Else, the other thing for not just the sheriff's office, but for law and order, I view the courts as a part of that system. Whether or not each function of the court is something that's mandated or constitutionally needed, et cetera, might be another conversation, but the courts are part of that law and order that I don't think if you just focus on the sheriff's office and ignore the courts, I don't think you're upholding the needs of the county. So somewhere there's got to be a balance in there for that whole system rather than just focusing on one department of the law and order, what I'll call the law and order group in there. I guess I'm good.
Okay, so I'm going to go to legal and request reviewing the policy change. It's a finance policy. It's one section of it, and I'm under the assumption we might be able to make that change for next, to address that change and have you vote on it next Tuesday possibly.
For a 1 year, for a 1
Or
year
1
budget?
year. Mhm.
Okay,
But I'm going to first talk to legal and
Yeah.
make sure.
so we'll try and move that. And I don't want to fool anybody. I'm still not happy with 6.2, and I'm going to ask, I won't vote approval on a budget that gives me 6.2. we go to 19 to 6.2 and we don't think the state's going to say anything to us. But that's just one opinion and I can be outvoted. I'm just telling you up front, as I always do. I try to be real honest with everybody here. I'm not satisfied with 6.2.
Not that it's a big number, but I had also received some additional suggestions for reductions and particularly over the non-departmental budget, which I oversee. And there's a couple items that I can reduce. One was in the dues, and another one was in tuition and registration. So, and then there was a suggestion to reduce the Expo Center 100%, the whole 125,000 that we support, that we transfer to them. And so that's a possibility, but they're on
Yeah, I
their
saw
side, they
Kim's
told me it
message on
impacts
that.
the
That-
rodeo
that
and the,
Brings a whole set of
Fair.
questions to me on that, so I'll have to do some more.
Yeah.
Work on that. It
yeah. And
feels a
so
little
currently
funny.
we don't have in the budget this capital improvement transfer reduction of $1 million. That just defers some of your maintenance projects and everything. And so if you're willing to look at that, that could be incorporated into this budget and further increase the reserve from 6.6 to, 7.6. But it means that we would have to have the capital improvement budget revised.
Yeah. And
So is that something?
I think we've kind of asked Public Works to make that request. Yeah, okay. So I think they're gonna do that. Will we hear, are we gonna hear about that tomorrow? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's
I
possible.
thought that was
That's
coming.
possibly another, and that's a pretty significant reduction that would improve 2026 numbers. If we're able.
Is that the account that the surplus that they have the 7 or 8 million in?
They have a fund balance of a little over 6 million.
Okay, that was what I wanted to ask and bring up. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that can definitely give us a little bit of cushion if we're able to move that over. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I would also like to suggest that to the best of our ability in the budgeting process, if we're just going to start with the numbers and say that this is what we've got and where necessary cuts are, that as soon as possible, those numbers should be upfront in the discussion of the budgeting process. So then we can go through the budgets of the different departments and we can work through those difficulties rather than go through the hearing from all the different departments and their proposed budgets. And then suddenly we come up and we're up against the deadline now and
Yeah.
throwing out numbers that says, let's make these drastic cuts. And by the way, you got to live with it. If we're just going to be from the commissioner's side, if all we're going to do is look at the end result numbers and throw out, this is all we've got for finances and there are no options, then the budgeting process is from one side to the other is no lack of connection. There's lack of communications in there somewhere.
Well, I would disagree with that. What the first budget I came through when I come in here, I sit down and said, we got to find a budget where these equal. We can't keep spending more than we have. And I've said on numerous occasions that we need to sharpen our pencils. And I've said on numerous occasions, you don't want me making that decision for you. But that's where I got stuck is we were sitting, we were looking at this big taking out of our reserves. So, okay, I'll make the decision. I'm a big boy. I put on my pants. I'll do it. But I ask several times that it be done out here. So it's nothing new. It's been going on for 2 years.
Mhm. And
You
and
know
we
it has
do-
because we've talked about it.
Yeah, we do present in August a preliminary revenue and expense budget, and that's where you see revenues don't match expenses. And it's been a deficit for several years. So I agree. I mean, it needs to start with, this is how much revenue we have. How can we build a budget that is within those revenue streams.
Yeah, in simplest terms, you'd like, okay, this is the money we have, this is the allocation you're gonna get, you decide how you do it. I don't run sheriffs, I don't run Superior Court. I'm not in a position to tell them, you need this, this, and this, and you can cut this and this. I wouldn't know. I can offer up questions and ask, but it's each department knows their departments. They know where that is. And you have to rely on them to put it there. So I think if you want to say we made progress, we're going to look at try and do it one. You're going to try and find a little more reserve here that we're not eating so bad, although I'm not giving any guarantees that I won't.
But I still think you're going to have to do some type of special task force to look at suggestions and ideas for the future, because you have a deficit budget
Yeah.
and you have to shrink that.
And trust me, I sit down with Jim and Joel every so often and I talk about tort reform. I talk about all these mandates. I talk about the mandate for the OPD and how we can fix some of that stuff at the state under current people in power up there. It's going to be very difficult, but trust me, I'm looking at every side of this thing and trying to figure how do we get some relief from the state from all this nonsense that keeps popping our way.
Is there anything else you want done today?
Is there
Discuss
anything else?
Want to come up?
Commissioner Dahl, you mentioned OPD twice now, so I just figured, I don't know. if
Well,
that's
it's because
you
I
or
think
not,
that's
but-
such a stupid decision.
So, I'm the fly in the ointment here with the state mandating new caseload standards for my office. I have attended all of the budget workshops we've done. In short, we're in a point of expansion. We have to expand. As you see, I'm seeking to increase my budget by, I think it's been a while since I've done decimals this far out, but I think 5/10,000ths, so 0.0005% increase of my budget. So to decrease my budget by another 5%, we've doubled our floor space. As you know, we bought another floor in the building we're in. We are not expanding beyond the addition of one attorney at this point in time next year. That does put us up against mandated ratios of attorneys to support staff, paralegals, et cetera. But I am doing what I'm doing with the commissioner's kind of agenda in mind, which is not overexpanding, not overspending. So that's why my budget is where it is. It says status quo in the green section of the handout, but it's kind of a badge of pride at this point that we're being forced to expand and we're not costing the taxpayers or anybody any more money in doing so. So, I mean, that's about as far as I can cut it. I don't think there is any fat to cut from my office. I have a lot of wants, but I'm putting those aside and I'm just asking for needs at this point in time. So that's what we have at the Office of Public Defense. I feel comfortable coming to the board and saying this is a need, but the only thing I've done so far in that vein is one additional attorney for next year. And I've explained why that's necessary, just so the county stays in the right side of these new standards.
And I do believe, isn't Wasack pushing a lawsuit?
Yes.
Yeah,
And there's
I
a lot
know
of talk.
there's
There's a lot of movement as
there's
well
some
for-
movement
Yeah.
trying to get some of that. So we're trying to work,
We're trying to work
not
within it.
just,
Yes.
not just in this room, but we're trying to work outside this room.
There's a lot of people saying, where's the funding coming from? And I think the legislators in the state are hearing us, but it's just conjecture.
They're
at
too
this point
busy
in time.
building battery-powered ferries down in Florida.
And we have secured the only sizable grant we can apply for, which is a $263,000 grant. So that's where we're at. I just thought I would address that.
appreciate it.
You got one more comment on that?
The requirement for a reserve should not be part of the argument. The argument is spending more than is coming in. I agree with that. The reserve is for difficult transient situations. I agree with that. That's what a reserve is for.
Just an overall general comment is that, as you stated, our county has been basically static in income. And that is impacted by all the citizens of our county, in that we've had some major projects that didn't get approved that would certainly have contributed to it. So somewhere or another, we need to also have a more positive attitude on saying, what does it take to cause people to want to build or create? We've had J.H. Kelly decide to stay here. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we've got the port doing well, but it becomes a whole community effort to have a positive attitude and get businesses to invest and people along with that to invest. So it's a shame that it comes down to a meeting like this of crushing dollars for a budget that isn't increasing. And as you said, unfunded mandates are going out of sight, and we don't see any end in that. So again, it takes growth to accommodate increasing functions.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that. I think we'd like to see growth. It's difficult because then somebody picks up a little name, the Friends of whoever, and they come from out of town and they fight it, which is nonsense, but. Okay. Let me reiterate what we're gonna try and do here. We're gonna try and look at 1 year alone to give us some time on 2027, because I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty darn certain that we can't pass a budget that shows negative. I don't think we can do that. So the alternative is to try and figure the 1 year and then work real hard to figure out, everybody work real hard to figure out how we're gonna do the other. And
Correct. And then in addition, a few of these one items, looking at whether we can implement, like, for example, the $1 million on the capital improvement fund.
do you think we can see it? Well, you're pretty quick. I'm sure we can see it before the 23rd. You give us a little idea.
Yeah, actually, I have to, in order to meet to have something for a public hearing on the 23rd, I have to have it finished and into Agenda Quick next Tuesday.
Okay,
So, yeah, so I have to be very quick.
so we'll get a chance to look at what you have there. Okay. And everybody here can get into Agenda Quick. They can look at it too.
Once the agenda is posted, which is typically what, Thursday?
Yeah, we post the agenda on Thursday.
Okay. Just want to make sure all departments will have access and take a look.
Yeah, and all of our departments right now have access to go into Budget Boss and look. They can't touch anything. Only my department can touch it, so I can finish it, but they have the ability to look.
Okay.
Okay.
One last call. Anything?
One last question.
Sure.
On the numbers that you presented last week for the different departments for the different percentage cuts, was there a methodology how you, instead of across the board, everybody had to do 10% or 12%? How did you arrive at the different percentages for the different departments?
Probably a little bit on got bigger because there's more funds over there. Like I know, what you call law enforcement and sheriff and stuff, that's over 50% of the budget right there. So the bigger thing was trying to get down to a dollar figure that we could increase the reserve. You can move the percentages however you want. I'm not married to any of those. I'm more interested in, my personal view is more interested in how do we increase the reserve?
Okay.
And I think you were looking at what these numbers would get us closer to a
Yeah.
2-month reserve if they were able to be implemented.
Right. Yeah. Wasn't. Some probably think I was trying to pick on Buddy, but I wasn't trying to pick on anybody. I was trying to arrive at a number. I'm not married to where you want it to come from. I just need to get to a number for a discussion point and work it from there.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
okay. Enough. I don't see any more comments. We will adjourn. Thank you.